I'll sit here.
There's two of them in the car. Two obituaries.
You're not watching kids, you know, here.
Yeah. Was it taller?
He's coming, right?
No.
I'm thinking like the kids are gonna show up and start running. I'm so grateful I You're not doing the other thing we want.
Put your phones on.
Oh my God. I can't turn mine off because I can't figure out how to get attention.
How wonderful Jill just called and said,
I do.
"There's
It's not
permission to do
working.
what you want."
Jay.
And all that special. They did that. Yeah. They usually have it on the back. And the ones I usually hear.
What would you like to do, cassette?
This is appropriate. Very nice. I was so glad for myself. He looked so well and healthy, you know. That's the thing about his body, it was healthy. And so I just thought he was going to be here 5 years. He's sitting in that purple chair. It was fine. He wasn't bothering me, but you don't know. Never requested anything or demanded anything. Never.
I'm not wearing that. Oh, yeah. What are they going to say? They probably just put those up.
It was the
You can't get rid of them.
But it is wonderful. I'm so glad you
There
pointed
might be
that out.
some.
Yeah, I might not have realized. And look, the Evertsens are doing it.
I brought one, just in case.
I did a bunch on the table.
Oh, they do?
I'm not going to have it. We're going to be crying. We're going to suffocate.
This is what he always said that I got kids.
Yeah, stuff comes up, huh? Like I said, Grandpa's shoes in his closet. His little brown shoes are sitting in there. And he always had those same brown shoes on.
Yeah, that one made me cry.
Yeah, there was those white pieces.
It's funny, you walk in and there they were.
And it was like where he was in bed.
Yeah,
Every once in a while.
yeah. I sometimes ever want to play with those very.
Oh,
Usually you've seen him with shoes on. You know what I mean? Almost always.
I know, he can walk.
Sometimes they act without
You know,
really
outside like that.
So it wasn't repetitive at all. Yeah.
There you go. I didn't wear your shoes.
And I said, is that 5,000? And he says, so I'm just going to say, what, my oh, they've done all this.
Yeah, I can
There they are.
That's my mom.
Yeah, we got this.
That's what I should do.
Here we are.
Hi, guys. Hi, Mom. I know. She said, "Did you call your mom?" I said, "No, she'll find out." It was kind of a surprise.
Yeah, that he was coming down.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Good.
That's why I came to see you. Want to see all the
Staying working.
Yeah, yeah. Just for a little bit.
It's a story for another day, but it's all good. It's just.
I've been praying for it.
Yeah, we talked to Target.
Yeah. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I'm all-
Oh, no, please no.
Find somebody spiritual.
I know almost everybody.
That's good for your kids.
It's gonna be my
Absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's proud.
I was like, you're the good one.
I was gonna say you came back to our
I do.
How are you?
some German kid.
I know. I love it.
Far away. I know you wasn't coming far.
No, I came right after.
You know, I told Jordy, I said, I miss a lot of things, but I don't miss.
We all wore suspenders. Jay's boy.
That's cool.
She used to get a suntan, 3 shirts.
But I live in the best place.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Which
funny.
is the greatest ever in my mind. I love it.
I know, but now, when I passed by my
And I don't miss you. I don't miss it. I mean, I miss some of the stuff with all my friends and family. But I like being in the middle of nowhere. And no people. I'm happy as happy.
There's a few people enough to make it popular.
Oh, yeah. We still have a store and stuff. Yeah. I don't do that anymore.
I know. But you know, I remember that.
Yeah, there's, you can still get
Yeah. In Montana too.
Oh, yeah. We got police. They get arrested every once in a while. I'm just not part of it.
This.
How was the ride?
You know, I
Oh,
thought
the big
that I
one,
was
yeah,
going
there
to
with
be
it on the
miserable,
table.
but I was
Yeah,
just so excited and it was good. It was really
yeah.
good. And I made stops. I did.
No,
I
I
did.
just had to say, you and Ricky.
Thank you. I have. I do a lot of different things. I haven't smoked for almost 10 years.
Yeah, that's how
I haven't drank for 2 and so
his
on.
doctor said, don't quit. Just say, I'm going to have a cigarette when I drink seconds.
You know what? Yeah. I'm just trading off for a while. Yeah. I put it down and I just went, you know what, I'm done. Made a choice. I'll do it.
He was going to have back surgery, and one of his cousins is a physical therapist, and she said, if you quit smoking, you won't need back surgery. And he quit in October and went to the doctor about his surgery, like in January, February. She said, your discs are all full back up.
Cool.
No back surgery.
You
It
start
just sucks.
exercising, you start living, a cleaner life type of deal, and
And you're super active up there.
it pays off. I do so, yeah.
Yeah.
I ride a bike everywhere I go.
Oh, that's cool. So Joan and Jay do the bikes. They say you can go clear from northern Utah down to St. George. There's just a couple places you have to get off and walk.
Wow. That's
It is cool.
Remember to tweak it.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe.
People are just catching up to us.
Yeah.
They're gonna be able to walk up and down, so maybe right where this chair is once.
Come here, Mom. Hang out. Oh, you got one.
Yeah, I had to go back and get this. Because I gave both mine.
In a suit.
Yeah, from the work clothes.
Oh, that. Get one of those.
Let me know what it for you.
I know. What do you want to past me? It's because I'm dressed up for work. Oh, shit. I know. What's up, brother? Come here. Bring it in here. I ain't got COVID. I've had 2 shots. Oh, thank you.
Hold on.
Now,
I've had 2 shots too.
now we have the variant. Look at us.
That's
The
not what
variant
they call
twins.
it.
My dad brought some shots.
There you go. Nobody said it.
Those suits. He works here.
I'm just kidding.
How is Texas?
I hate Texas. Yeah, absolutely.
I've been there a couple times recently because my youngest daughter, Kevin, lives there.
Oh, where at?
In Austin.
Oh, yeah, it's too far. I'm North Dallas.
Okay. All right. I've been there.
But you're in the same state.
Yeah, so are we in jail? I never see her.
We go to Corpus, South Corpus.
Yeah, for fun, yeah. Yeah, that's really all
Our
good.
first year was a big freeze last year.
That was fun.
Yeah, good idea.
I should have brought a coat.
Yeah, my generator ran for a week. It was nice.
I was the only one of the few in the park that had a generator.
Oh, look at you.
I was
Yeah.
like, what's that? I said, "Well,
You're like, it works.
I got heat.
Yeah, me and my wife sat there. I got a full Jenny outside. Like power goes out, it comes on.
Oh, okay. You got standby.
Yeah.
It's like, let's go over there.
I invited people over. No. I seriously invited people over that had kids. Not one of them showed up. I'm like, all right. Lost their stuff in the fridge. I mean, I got the dryer going.
You know, okay, that stuff losing shit in the fridge.
Yeah. It's quite up. It's 20. No one thinks about you.
I'll set my purse down somewhere.
Put mine on the floor.
These things have to
I
happen.
know, that's the only way we get together.
I just like your face just.
You're good.
Okay, yeah.
I'm happy.
That's not you said.
I know.
But that's not behind your back.
I'm like, Yeah?
Okay, see, this is
It's good to see you, man.
Likewise, this is cool. It's not,
Yeah.
it's gotta happen.
There she is. Jill.
Jill. Jill, Gus is looking for you.
Okay, there we go. So,
You have Pat's number? She wants to go
Central, right? Just me.
Oh, okay.
Jordy's my oldest daughter. Yeah. I got 4.
Just need to say first.
Hi.
Yeah,
Good
hi.
to
Good to
see
see
you.
you again.
You met John?
I was like, yeah, I'm like, hold on, I was suspecting. I mean, from there.
You're in the
I know.
It's staying with us right now. Good morning. She's on vacation.
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Good.
Oh, so she's there.
She's there. Yeah.
Yeah, we decided yet. We're scared of it. Doing on Gary. I could never remember wearing them. I may have when I was a little guy. I never owned it. Oh, yeah.
I just knew that you guys have to do that.
See, I remember that picture.
Yes,
I remember most of it.
Did you get the Elvis too? You got 2 then.
Probably got 2. Yeah, they were like, I would say, that was huge. I saw Tracy and yeah, I saw it right before. Yes, and when we traveled around the yes, I did see in San Francisco. I saw Greg on
Patches. Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you know.
No, I did, and there was pictures of profound. Yeah, I thought what's it called? Anyway, yeah.
A lot of times when I am doing that, 20 minutes before, I don't.
He didn't know how we got married.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, I checked it out.
Oh, that's fun.
It's cool to watch yourself. Like, you see your cousins and go, yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's so much snow. That's cute. See, now I appreciate him. I appreciate him on my phone. Kirby.
So,
well, you paid. It's just
Same thing. I know.
the safety meetings.
You sure do.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Hey, Tina.
You're good.
I probably will too.
My niece just died.
Yeah, I can see you. I can see you. Yeah, we both have our hands. Yeah, that's the same exact place downstairs.
Yeah, that's
It is nice. And they're good together.
back in a couple of minutes.
Remember that stare?
Yeah, so I'll wear nicer, like leggings, but I like a long, actual blouse.
Tyler. I know. Look, a year ago.
I used to wear I was suits and like business stuff like that. So now I'm like, well, that was suits and I have things that are priorities that I don't
One size.
Oh, that's good. That's rather sweet.
Don't let.
Oh, that was cute. It's not bad.
I had imagined that once you get back there. Grandma loved those Olympic animals.
Thanks for coming. Good to see you. It probably is, right? I don't think it's got the jazz anymore. Yes. Jazz.
Now we have to
We waited.
Then your dad.
sometimes you know, very right, you know, so it's like we got each other, you know. Yeah, we all change with us, so I go in there every single I can go in like right, and then anytime I don't have to wake up this morning, I'll work for like 2 hours and I'm like, gosh, I'm like, oh,
I put myself there.
Just available for a
like in case of emergency, I know he's been happy all the lot to us. So don't go back to the office. You know, if like there's an earthquake, then no, too much gas man.
that was in our house the other day. She's like behind me. And then she's like, she'll move a chair. I'm like, you'll be up here.
I'll go with me, Mom. What's it supposed?
COVID. See, I'm social distancing. Right, I never saw that. Yeah, you're still pretty good. Maybe look at that too. My feet hurt. That's about it. Back up Listen, there's a lot of things that I've heard that people left me.
Alright, we got Darlene empty. How lucky are we?
I always remember when you were at that
Drop
We always go over and see how my friends are always so awesome. And they were like, ooh.
I'm almost 60 years old.
And we have to come in a dressing room.
Oh, she is? Okay, let's do it.
What problem? Did you get to see Grandma? No, I didn't at all.
He said it's available, but he thinks it's 60. He says it might be 30. I think 60.
And your kids, right?
Third cousins. He's still welcome, right?
I remember something like
Kelly was in college, so she was I was hoping you'd call. Save me. And then he said, just take her home.
Yeah, I can. There's a Broncos place
I saw that.
Here's Federal. There's Strand. It's just off on the side. That alley. That's the It's on
Sitting down.
Or that parking lot, and then the Hilton over here.
Yeah, we're going to the same place.
Yeah, we are.
You're gonna be downstairs.
So, yeah, it's happened. It's part of life.
No, I know.
Well, it's a present.
Yeah.
You're not gonna sit with me?
Well, we had
Bad.
They're all good.
But when you see how it's not about kids,
I found it.
She said she's.
I even got Texas.
I asked for
I tried to keep my Virginia stuff. Thinking that just became the balance.
I just remind her.
Hey!
We're gone. Yeah, so the rest of the meeting. I was in this
You bring your kid? Oh, I see. Yeah. He was telling me he's getting another mile.
I always remember when yeah, exactly. And that's why we find that I didn't know how we were too far.
No, I just said, I was just telling you where it was.
We're too far.
It's right on the right there. Stop. And then walk straight.
I think it's closer to the street. Maybe not. Yeah, so I was telling her when she was on.
I was just
He
thinking,
was in one of the. He was in one of the clips.
how was he?
So yeah, you know, we'll take around the house.
I know. There you go.
Well, where we are, I didn't know we were talking about.
No, I'm leaving tomorrow morning, but well, sir, you guys want to sit up front? Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, find the seat, have a seat. We can hear you. We have hear you. Either you're hearing too loud or you're hearing too short.
Yeah, she goes, I know.
Oh, I heard all about it.
People have come to sit with us if you want. Me and my kids are now
we got plenty of space. I'll probably sit with you guys. Not 11:45. This spot is called. I don't know anything about it. This time it's called Vision, so they can come and talk to Darlene and hug her and stuff. And then I start the initial program at 45. Early on time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I have to wait till later. Yeah, well, put me on your Google page. I think you look good. Make me a Google. Well, somebody took my phone the other day. I was at the table. It was like, don't try it. It was like 3 months ago. It didn't involve me at all.
Never does. You got
No, I just.
I'll pass it to you. What do you need?
Well, I'd rather go for the same reason. Oh, it's not bad.
It'll vibrate.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. So if you're still in line and you don't get to talk to Grandma, you can talk to her afterwards a little bit, but about 5 minutes if you want to find your seats. Okay, 2 minutes, everybody. It's time to take your seats. Can you hear me now? Testing, testing. Can you hear me now? Okay. Perfect. My singing star.
I can see you jump.
You're just like me.
Oh my goodness, what a glorious morning to see all of your happy faces. It's been so much fun to see you this morning as you've stopped in line to share stories with us of how Grandpa Gary, he's my dad, but of how Gary touched your life. Thank you just so much for coming. Oh, hi, kids. That's my ADD. You'll see it a lot today.
It pops in and out.
It pops in and out. I'm Jill. I'm Jill Young. I'm Gary's youngest daughter and also his favorite.
That's my line.
We're good, but I got to go first, so I got to steal that line. I want to do something just a little bit curious, probably, for a celebration of life. But if you have known Gary for less than 40 years, please stand up. So if you're a youngin', if you're under 40, okay, there you go. Look at this, yes. So this is probably, grandchildren, people who married into the family, people who knew Gary in his 40s or older. All right, go ahead and sit down. Nice. Now, if you have known Gary for over 40 years, so, from the beginnings of his life, please stand up. Now that I noticed you did that a little slower. Okay, some of you are a little older, that's fine. Nice, over 40 years. Great. What a tribute to Gary that in the beginnings of his life, he could carry those friendships and relationships so far. Now just one more little fun thing. If you have known Gary for over 70 years, please stand up.
This isn't fair.
If you are sitting next to one of these people, please give them a fist bump or a hug if you can. They have known Gary. They have known his full entire life. And what a tribute to Gary that he had created friendships and relationships that have lasted through his lifetime. It's a rare thing these days with our transient population, everybody moving all over the country. It's a rare thing to have a friend for life. Lunch Bunch, please wave your hand. If you're in the lunch bunch, thank you so much. Going to lunch every Tuesday was one of Grandpa's favorite things. Thank you so much for being here. Grandma and I reflected this morning that it's just so perfect that today's a Tuesday. There we go. We're at lunch. We're at lunch with Gary. So thank you for that. We're gonna move on with the program today. We're first gonna have a prayer by Gary's son-in-law, Jay. Jay's going to give us an opening prayer. Then we're going to hear from all of Gary's favorite children, all of his favorite children. Greg first. Where are you, Greg? Just so I have my eyes on you. There we go. Greg, then John, then Joan, and then I'll wrap up with a few words as well. But we have planned for some moments at the end for any of you who would like to share a fun story to celebrate Gary. We've planned that as well. And then we'll wrap up the day with a closing prayer by Cameron Schroeder, his grandson. Where are you, Cameron? So I have my eyes on you. Awesome. Thank you. All right, with that, Jay, your turn.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to get together today on this beautiful day to honor the life of Gary Evertsen and to celebrate his life and the many wonderful things that he's been able to accomplish through his work and dedication to the community, to his family, to his friends, and to those that he would come in contact and give a smile and share things and become close friends almost instantly. We're thankful for the legacy to which he's led and is now being passed down to future generations, and for all the knowledge and the skills that he has taught his family through his hard work and his education, and we're thankful for those memories. We would ask that thou would please bless Darlene and the kids at this time, that they can have the added and necessary strength to get through not just today, but the coming weeks and months and years ahead. And I'd ask a special blessing that those of us who can will continue to reach out, offer support, because it'll be a while before everything starts to get to a new normal. We're thankful for the plan of salvation and how we know that this is just a temporary separation, and that one day we will be able to see him and be with him again. Once again, we're grateful for the wonderful memories that we have, and we'd ask a blessing be upon those who are speaking today, that they'll be able to relay those thoughts and messages that they've prepared, that they will be able to come across in a way that will touch our hearts, and that we will be able to remember and take them forward with us. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thanks, Jay. That was heartfelt. Good to see everyone come out to this tribute to my dad. Just looking around all these faces makes me realize all the lives that he touched over the years. You know, we all knew this day was coming, but it doesn't make it any easier now that he's gone. Anyway, I just got a little thing prepared here. I was gonna go through. Hopefully, we can touch on a lot of things that Dad did, but there's no way we can touch on everything. He had a long, full life. I think we'll all be remembered one day for certain characteristics, personality traits, things that we like and do and have done in our past. But when I think of Dad, he'll be remembered for the love of his love of nature, the universe, his family and children. Not just his own children, but all children. He loved kids so much, he even started a business and cared for them while their parents were working. And I remember some days when I'd be at the daycare and I'd hear the little kids calling him Mr. Gary. They all loved Mr. Gary. And he was always there fixing something, you know. Dad instilled a love of nature in me at a very young age. He would take me and my little brother backpacking and fishing in the wilderness often. We would sit around the campfire at night and eat fish we had just caught and cooked over an open flame. We'd stare at the stars and talk about the universe. Dad really loved talking about science and nature and stuff like that. He just had a special connection to how he felt being in the wilderness. And he loved the book Cosmos by Carl Sagan, and he referred to it often. He read it, and he would always show me certain things in the book that he liked. And I eventually read the book myself, and we always shared the same ideas about how we see each other, and how our place was in the universe. Dad loved the scouting program, and he was an Eagle Scout. And when I was younger, he became a scoutmaster.
And all his scouts were very fond of him. He was never my scoutmaster because I was too young at the time to be one of his scouts. But he made sure that I got into scouting, was part of the scouting program, and I eventually went on to become an Eagle Scout, just like he did. I remember the older scouts telling me how Dad would scare the hell out of them on camp out. He convinced them that he was a werewolf. And he could make his face change appearance by shining a flashlight on his face at a certain angle. A couple of scouts were so frightened at camp they ran away from the camp and had to go find him.
Never found again.
Some other special memories of Dad when I was growing up was when Dad taught me how to play chess. We would play all the time. He was very good at it, and I didn't get to beat him very often. I think that by him teaching me that game of chess when I was at a young age, it helped me be a better person, figuring things out later in life. And somehow I think he knew that. He thought that was a good thing to teach me how to play chess, and I'll never forget that. I think I was maybe 14 years old when I bought my dad an awesome chess set for Christmas. We still have it to this day. I was so excited about giving him that gift that I wasn't anything else that Christmas. I just couldn't wait for him to open that up and see it, because that was our thing to do. We just loved sitting down and playing chess. It's been a lot of years since we sat down at the chessboard, but I'll never forget those times spent with my dad. Another activity me and Dad liked doing together was staying up late on a Saturday night and watching Saturday Night Live together. And this was in the early years, when John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, those guys, And he allowed me to stay up late. Him and Mom allowed me to stay up late and watch that kind of stuff. And it was so much fun laughing at all those comedy skits. One of the few times we ever got to have soda pop in our house was on a Saturday night. Dad would buy a 6-pack of Coke in bottles, and we would drink ice cold Coca-Cola, and Dad would make popcorn. He loved popcorn, and he had this special way of making it on the stovetop, and put the butter and salt in it. But yeah, that was a memory I'll never forget. Dad was a very hard worker, and his example of hard work carried over to each one of us kids. I think Dad learned about hard work when he spent summers working on his grandpa's ranch in Rockland, Idaho. Dad loved to talk about his experiences working on his grandpa's farm in Rockland and spending time with his grandpa. He had a special relationship with his grandpa May. He loved his grandpa very much, and you could always count on Dad to talk about his life experiences with him. He told stories about fishing in Yellowstone, and how when they were fishing and they would throw their fish up on the bank, and they'd turn around and the bears were out there on the bank eating the fish. So him and his granddad had to wade deeper into the water to get away from the bears. And then many stories of working on the farm and spending time living on the land that his grandpa homesteaded in Rockland. Later on in his life, Dad bought some property in Idaho that he eventually built a cabin on. Dad told me one time he bought the land near Lava Hot Springs because it reminded me of the farm he worked on in Rockland as a child. Building the cabin was one of the highlights of Dad's life. It was something that really bonded our family together when all of us still lived here. Not long after the cabin was finished, John moved away for work, and so did Jill and her family. The summer of 1996, every weekend, we would all meet at the property to work on the cabin. You've probably seen pictures of it flashing up here on the screen today. That's the cabin that we all love and spend so much time together with. We were, when we were building it, we were placing the metal roof on the cabin in late October after a long summer of building. And it was starting to snow. So we got it done just in time. And it wasn't finished yet. Dad would do that over several more years. But the main structure was in place and dried in, windows were in, doors were in, and it was all protected from the weather. And we still have pictures of that first winter when Dad made it up there to check on the cabin, and there was so much snow. There was 6 or 8 feet of snow that year. We were so glad that we got that thing done. I need to mention this too. Dad was an electrician for many years and a proud member of the IBEW. When I was younger and still in school, he encouraged me to do the same as him. I eventually became an electrician as well and followed in my dad's footsteps. During my dad's career, he had to do a lot of traveling to find work. Times back in those days was kind of hard. Working around here, there just wasn't a lot. His travels took him to many places, such as Ohio, New York, Illinois, Texas, Nevada, Washington State, and Idaho. When I got older and was out of school for the summer, he would take me with him, and I would stay in his trailer while he was at work. Well, I wouldn't stay in the trailer all day. I'd go out and do some fishing or something. But that's, when Dad was on the road, that's what he did. He stayed in a little camp trailer. And he would even invite one of his buddies to stay with him, so it was him and one of his buddies and me sleeping in the little camp trailer. But that's life on the road as an electrician, and I really think Dad liked it. Some of the places he took me was Huntington, Utah, while I worked on the power plant. Got to stay up at Joe's Valley Reservoir, just fish all I wanted. Soda Springs, Idaho, while I worked at the Monsanto plant. And St. Anthony, Idaho, while he worked on the Teton Dam. And this was, I don't know if y'all remember, this was like a year before the Teton Dam disaster when that dam broke. But most of the times when he traveled with other electrician friends of his and be gone for months at a time. One time when I was, this can be the hard part. One time when I was very young, my dad had to leave for a long time to work out of town. I remember him driving away, and I was so sad. I cried. And he told me why he had to go, and he said I needed to stay here and take care of Mom and my little brother and sister while he was away. I was old enough to know what was going on, but I was still just a child, and I was sad that my dad was leaving. I just know he was just as upset about leaving as I was. Not long after he left, he sent me these postcards. If If you guys want to look at them later, they're pretty interesting, but I'll read one. Dear Greg, this is the town where I live. There's lots of little towns like this, one every 10 or 12 miles, and they all look the same. And this is in Ottawa, Illinois, where he lived. And the postmark on it is August 29th, 1967. And I still have these. I look at them often. They mean a lot to me. And this one in particular has got a picture of downtown Ottawa, and there's all these old cars on it. It's really interesting if you guys want to see it. Yeah, you know, times back then were tough. The economy was bad, and he had to do what he had to do to support her family out of love. Sometimes dads just have to leave, but he always came back. This dementia illness Dad had was tough to watch him go through. It took away all of his short-term memory. But I was always able to talk with Dad about his past and the things that we used to do. And he would remember a lot of stuff, and he always knew who I was. I would ask him how he was doing today, and he would say stuff like, "Well, I'm still alive." And then he'd always say to my mom, you're so good to me. So we knew he was sick, but what was hard was we really never were able to get in his head to see how he was feeling. But it was really good just to know that he kept all those memories, you know, that he didn't lose it. You could talk to him about that kind of stuff. And I would bring up stuff all the time. We were very fortunate to be able to care for Dad at home throughout his illness up until the day he died. Other than the last few hours, I really think he was very comfortable and he died peacefully. In closing, I just want to mention a couple of things. My mom and Dad loved each other very, very much. And by their example of kindness and love, it instilled strong family values in each one of us kids. Also, I want to say how much I admire and look up to my brother John and my sisters Joan and Jill. We've always got along together and cared for each other very much. I'm very proud to be part of this family. I think we need to give credit to our wonderful parents for setting such a good example of love, kindness, and respect for each other. Love you, Dad.
You couldn't have opened with that? You couldn't open with that? Now I'm a mess. So, thank you all for coming. A lot of faces around here I haven't seen for a long time. It's good to see you guys. You all look the same. Right? You look good. I'm twice my twin, but I think I might liven this thing up a little bit. But I mean, there's hundreds of memories, even thousands. And you look at these photos, you know, I just went through probably 15,000 of those, scanned them, put them in the cloud, hard drive. You just have no idea how many things that you can talk about when you come up here. But, you know, there was always Dad with camping, sporting, you know, changing out my first alternator, right? Telling me how to do it because it was probably in backwards. But, you know, then there's I've never lost a parent, right? This is new. This is new. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. I could probably stand up here for hours like I do at work. People falling asleep. And, yeah, Jill's timing me right now. You can just go on and on, but the one thing I want to make sure that everyone knows is Gary was probably one of the first nerds. Right? Right? He kept the pocket protector company in. This guy, the only guy I know has got still has clean shirts. We don't carry pens anymore, but if you had to buy him something on Amazon, it was probably a pocket protector, or a book on history, right, or botany, of all people. You're like, what plant is that? It was a 2-hour lesson, right? People used to wipe with that, yeah. All types of things, right? Right? Indians used to do this, right? Okay, thank you. The other thing about Gary was, and I say Gary, and you'll know why when I changed this up in the end. But, Gary always knew a little bit more about anything else you knew about. You could spend 4 years in school, one subject. But if you started bringing this up with Gary, he'd always just one-up you, right? And then you try to explain to him, no, this is real. And then he'd start to raise his voice, right? So you just had to give up. Because he was like, yes, right? He knew it, no matter what. Gary knew it. But, I'm going to tell a story. Nobody knows. Probably me and a few people. I hate to say I was waiting to tell the story, which I probably should have told years, but it's got really good content, and at the end you'll understand who Gary was. Right. So, I mean, on Saturdays, we used to get in the truck, no seatbelts. Joan was in there chewing on the dashboard. Right?
The sheet marks in the truck.
And I hate to say it, but sometimes Dad drove around and had an open container. Right?
Those are the days.
Joan was trying to drink it, but she did love beer. So we'd make the rounds, either looking for tools, ammo, looking at guns. We'd just drive around all over the place. And we end up at Grand Central, which in our neighborhood, that was like the Mecca, right? 12th Street and Wall. But you know, you just spend your Saturdays like that. And I remember on a summer day, we stopped in at Grand Central. We hit the front door. Obviously, kids went this way, parents went the other way. Nobody cared about that back then, right? You're like, bye, kids. I don't even know what he was doing, but I hit the bike area. I'm like, oh, I gotta look for some stuff for my bike. And then, of course, I turn the corner, and I'm 14. I just barely retired my Steve Austin Bionic doll. So I'm looking for something new to do. I find a skateboard, and I'm like, I gotta have a skateboard. Everybody has skateboards right now. This thing is yellow, bright, shiny. And so, of course, I'm like, I gotta find my dad. I didn't have I couldn't text him or call him, right? But I got it. It was like a gift we had back in the day, right? So I find him and I just start in on him. I'm like, I gotta have this. I'm not gonna be anybody without it. And, I mean, the thing was hideous too. It's bright yellow, but this is when skateboards came out, and you gotta be cool, right? I was probably 12 years old. So I was I was on him hard. He couldn't turn around without me saying skateboard, 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 skateboard. Well, we left Grand Central, no skateboard. Made 2 or 3 other stops, ended up at home, no skateboard. Right? Well, you know, he didn't really give in a lot. He was pretty good. He was pretty good at that. You know, he wasn't just gonna pony up something. So it was probably a few hours after we got home, and I probably figured out something else to do, climb a tree or something. But then I saw my dad in the kitchen, and I thought I better try again. So I'm like, I gotta hit him. So I hit him hard, right? I'm like, this is it. It's probably getting late. We got to get this thing now. Get home. And he comes to me and he's like, look, listen. What if I help you out? What if I help you out? And of course, I'm 12. I'm like, oh, another lesson. Here comes another lesson. Right? So I listened to him. He was like, look, I'll give you whatever's in my pocket, right? And he did. It was a whole bunch of change, and it was probably about $2. And I'm like, okay. I gave in. I took the money. I said, thanks, Dad. I ran upstairs. I used to keep all my change and stuff in this old coffee can. Had a yellow lid. I don't know why I remember all that, but I put it in there, and I put the money in there, and I start doing the math. I'm like, that's going to take forever. Right? And back then, the skateboards were probably, what, $8, $9? I started doing the math by month, and I'm like, this is going to take too long. And so I gave in. I put the lid on there, and of course you're 12, you're all ADD. I figured out something else to do for a while, but I noticed something on my bed. Two Grand Central bags. Skateboard was kind of long, so there's a bag here and a bag here. I'm like, I didn't put that there. Anyone knows I'm OCD, I kept my room pretty clean. There it was, yellow skateboard. The exact one I picked out. He made it back to the store, back to the house. Had no idea. Laying in my bed. I grabbed it, I ran downstairs, gave him a hug. Spent the whole summer on that thing. I can't tell you how many times he probably repaired the ball bearings or whatever it was. Sand or rocks or something in it, but you know, I told you earlier, you know, I reference him as Gary. Gary would always provide the lessons, right? But that was my dad. That was my dad. So if you want to know who he is, that's who he is. I'm not a crier.
Come on now.
In public. But, you know, he taught me the lesson first. I don't know how he timed it, but he did. I didn't see him leave, but he got that back, put it up on the bed, made a kid's day, right? Whole summer. But anyway, that was scary, but truthfully, that was my dad. Yeah. Anyway, I love you, Dad. I love you, Mom. That's it.
So he's my twin, so we have a little connection there. But so I'm the twin that was not that was a surprise. Not because my mom and dad. Come on now. Right? So I was born 11 minutes after John, and so I was surprised because my parents didn't know they were having twins. So, and then
Okay, I get it.
So, anyhow, so they just planned on having, we had Greg and he was 4, and then John was born, and then it was over until the doctor said, Mrs. Evertsen, you're not finished, you have another baby. And so it's me. So, we always talk about and tease Jill how she's the spoiled one, she's the last one, and Dad handed her, you know, all she had to do is like, hand her $20, you know, here's $20, and we had to beg. So just I wrote this because I just wanted to make sure I get to share most of it with you. But anyhow, my dad, Grandpa, and Mr. Gary. From the time I was a young girl, I remember a man of hard work and dedication to our family. A dad who taught me to be responsible. From pulling weeds in the vegetable garden, turning off the lights as we left each room. Always the lights, and I find myself still doing that. And collecting the warm eggs from the chicken coop. He took me by the hand and helped me not to be afraid of the loud red rooster who I believed was out to get me. We spent many long hours traveling in our trailer to Canada, Oregon, California. We camped and learned a lot about nature. I remember him telling me about a poplar tree, is what it was called. I thought it was so cool to be named a popular tree. So, from a long time, I'd say, there's the popular tree that you taught me, and there's another one, and there's another one. They're the tall, skinny trees, if you don't know. But anyhow, and then I remember during our travels in the camper, the kids had to sit in the back, and Mom and Dad are up front, and they're just enjoying each other, the music, nobody's sitting in between them, you know. And I remember being in the back with John and Greg, who, you know, I'm the little sister, and they kind of would pick on me or point at me, and I'd start crying. That's all they had to do is point at me, and I'd start crying. And so I remember it was my dad that said, come up here and sit in the front. You can sit by Mom and I, and it was warm, and I had the warm, fuzzy feeling, and it was my brothers who enjoyed sitting in the back together, where it was freezing cold. I remember the time when I was in high school. He and I got up early morning, every morning, for a couple of years. Actually, it was just a year because it was my senior year, and I had made the drill team. I was so excited. Anyhow, we'd get up every morning and we'd drink Shaklee protein. And you in this audience knows about Shaklee protein. Grandma Lila had us all on Shaklee protein, right? And Vitalia. So, and then he dropped me off to early drill team practice. So we spent every day my senior year doing that. However, I was so embarrassed of the old yellow Chevy van he drove to work. I almost considered walking. So I made him drop me off at the top of the street so nobody would see me. I had my clothes on for early drill, and I walked down the street at Bonneville at the top of Washington. I made him drop me off there. That old, ugly, I don't know, boys, if you remember, Mom, that old, ugly van that was this pale yellow, and he just thought, yeah, you're good, you know, this is all we have to drive, we're driving this. Anyhow, that was fun memories with my dad and I. Then college came, and I met many friends. One of my friends being my husband. Well, he left to serve a mission in the West Indies. And just as he was transferred to Florida, where the office was located, my family was planning a trip to Disney World in Orlando. Dad asked us, hey, if you kids earned some money, and we worked hard. We all three had jobs. Jill, however, helped, selling something, lemonade stand. Worked at the record club and stuff a little bit. right? So Dad asked to help with, if you help me with expenses, help with the flight, whatever. So each of us put in $200 or $300. I remember it being quite a bit. And we made the trip happen. During that time, when Jay was was transferred, I just thought, gosh, maybe we could drive. How far is it, Dad? Oh, no, what? What are you talking about? We can't go see him on a mission? There's no way he's on his mission. But Dad, he's going to be in the office. He's at the office. He's in Fort Lauderdale. And he's going, we're not driving 4 hours away to see your friend. Your friend. And so Dad, of course, said yes. And my poor brothers, to this day, I think how patient they were. And we sat in a rented car where it was hot, yeah. And I was sitting in the middle, and Greg and John are right on the side. I'm sure had some little hard feelings there. That we're driving 4 hours. That was a full day trip, 8 hours. So I thank my brothers, my brothers, and Jill, of course, for driving all the way to see Jay. And we took him to Burger King, and then the beach, and it was fun. We have some fun pictures. So I don't think anybody in this audience, and maybe the older, but where you would go visit your boyfriend on a mission and a friend. And so we did. We said friend, and the mission president approved, and so we took his companion. My dad truly loved my children. Cameron, Boston, Alec, he loved all the grandchildren. I asked my kids if they could share a memory of Grandpa. Where's my phone? Jill, will you get my phone? Boston says he enjoyed going to the cabin in the blue Bronco, hiking around the cabin and learning about the plants. Alec says when Grandpa would fill up the kitchen sink, Alec was probably 4 or 5.
10.
There's a picture of he and my dad, Alec and my dad, and Grandpa would fill up those 2 sinks, fill up with water, and he'd play with Alec, with guys and things, and just, just playing with him in the sink. And then Alec had another fun experience with him. They were at the store, and Grandpa said, "Hey, this is a cool hat. Let me get this hat." He puts it on. He goes. Grandpa said to Alec, "This is a Hewlett-Packard hat. This is cool. Let's get this." And Alec had to say, "Grandpa, that's a Harry Potter hat." So he bought it, but it has a little lightning bolt, which Grandpa thought was the bolt for the computer. Yeah. So, there's nerd for Grandpa, right? And then when Alec was around 6, a little bit older, he shouldn't have been doing this, but Alec would kind of do the picking his nose kind of thing. And he'd do this and this and this, and Grandpa would catch him and said, "You eating your boogers?" And, "What are you doing? Having your supper?" Taking your supper? If you remember you picking your nose, you were probably a little too old.
Yeah.
And then Cameron says this. He texted to me, and let me get to the front. Okay, so Cameron remembers going to the cabin when I was little. It's one of my favorite memories. I remember seeing Mootaus and him letting us take our seatbelts off once we got to the dirt road. I remember sleeping in the little shack cabin. Cameron's calling it a shack cabin, but it was like a tough shed that and there was probably there was a bed and a stove and enough to eat and sleep and get out and work. And that's where we started, was right there. And he says, he remembers one time asking him what he was doing with that arm. "Grandpa," it was dark in there, and they're sleeping back to Grandpa, "what are you doing with that arm?" And what Cameron was asking is, "Will you hold me? Will you put your
You put your arm around me and keep me safe so I'm not scared. I remember him teaching me to work hard. We helped with many projects on the cabin and I loved every one of them. He also would have us grandkids help him clean the daycares. He would take us and we would sweep or vacuum and wipe down tables. After we were done, he would pay the other cousins a few dollars and he'd pay me $5.
Never told.
I think we each got a few dollars and then he'd take us to McDonald's and get us some lunch. I loved those days and I appreciate him taking the time to teach me the value of work. When I think of Grandpa, I think of something that Kobe Bryant once said, "There is no substitution for hard work." Grandpa was a great example of a hard worker. Last week, when I was able to see him before he passed, I just wanted to hold his hand and think of all the great work he was able to do with his hands. He built, he fixed, he comforted. He even slapped us on the back of our heads with those hands. I hope to be able to say one day that my hands did great work, just like his. I'm so grateful for his countless hours of helping me manage our small business and learning what we call the books. He was so patient with me while I learned how to do payroll and quarterlies. I finally learned, and in several years, I hired someone else. Throughout the years of being in the childcare industry, he would always remind me to take care of your customers. They're always right. Within the last 6 months, I'll never forget his words to me while patting me on the head, "You're a good daughter, and it'll all work out." I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad, and my good brothers, and Jill, the baby sister that I was just, she was going to be a boy, and I was just so sad. The heartbeat was a boy, my mom would say. The heartbeat's the boy, and out comes my little sister. So I thank you, and I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. My goodness, I've even learned some fun things about my dad today. As I prepared my little talk, I reflected on an exercise I've done a couple of times, and maybe you've done this too. It's just something to help you plan your life and get things in perspective and kind of make sure that you're living with intention. And the exercise goes like this. You imagine this day where everybody who loved you is gathered in a room, and you imagine, what are they going to say about you? And I thought through what, we have said about Dad. And I just thought, I wrote down so many things like John, right? There's so many stories to share. Every single picture we could stop and talk for 100 hours of these memories, but like my brothers and sisters have shared today, Dad was a hard worker. And I'll just add to that, and he loved it. He loved hard work. So we probably know lots of people who are hard workers, but then they're miserable and they complain about hard working. Dad never complained. Cameron, that was so beautiful, what you talked about Grandpa's hands. I too woke up with Grandpa early in the morning for cheerleading practice this time, not dance, right? As he would get ready to go out into the cold, because he always worked with his hands. And I saw his hands cracked and bleeding. And he was just putting on his Eucerin cream on his fingers, right? And wrapping his hands in Band-Aids, not complaining. And I'd make us some peanut butter toast. We were beyond Shackley at that point. We were carb loading, all right, for the day. We would make some peanut butter toast. He was a hard worker. He built things. And he was so proud of everything that he built. There's not one of us that got in a Bronco, right, David? Got in a Bronco with Grandpa, and we'd be driving around town, and he'd go, "I wired that building, and I know that part. She's a great customer, not such a great customer," right? The D Event Center is a big highlight in his life. But there were buildings and homes that he wired that are not famous also. But he was so proud of it. He was a hard worker with his businesses. And most of us know he had this electrical contracting business, but he also had his childcare businesses, which both had their ups and downs. And I personally have learned so much from just listening to Grandpa and his ups and downs. But he also had many, many other businesses. And just over the course of the last few years, just talking to Grandma, she says he had a mail order business of something. Things would ship, and he had some ad in the back of a magazine. I didn't ask any other questions. You just never know, Dad. He was creative, but he was a thinker and a tinkerer. So Dad had lots of humor. He had these one-liners that he would share, but often he was just quiet. And with this family, it's hard to get a word in edgewise. So, but he was a quiet thinker, and I still even feel myself. If people are talking to me a lot, I kind of space out because I'm thinking about something. And I've even caught myself in the mirror or seen a picture of myself and thought, oh my gosh, that's what my dad looked like. He just always was thinking about something. One time, he has several inventions and patents, and he had invented the electronic trailer hitch locator and ball cover. Now, he's never one for creative names for his products, right? But he even said when we opened the child care centers, he would never let us name them something super creative. It was Layton Children's Center. No creativity, so the people got to know what you're doing. So he packed up a handful of these contraptions, and he and I went on the road selling these. I have memories of walking into just an AutoZone, and he'd walk up to the counter and try to sell a few of these, and I was just right alongside of him. But so many fun memories trying to sell Grandpa's inventions. Now, someone asked if I was going to sing today, and I'm not going to sing today. But I will recite a poem that Grandpa and I memorized on one of our road trips. If you're going to stop at the top with top stop. Yes? There we go. Every time we'd pass the top stop, right? We would memorize the top stop. Grandpa, we all just kept calling him Grandpa. My dad, he was so generous. He was so generous. He always gave more than he got, both with his time and his money. And my brothers and sisters remind me that he only had money when I was born. I'm sorry, but he was generous with his time and his money. As a son, he loved his mother. He loved his mother so much. And in her last days, he would often be, he would say, let's go to the store. We're going to get a treat for Mom. We're going to get a treat for Grandma. He would take her root beer. He would sneak it in to the rest home because he knew she loved it so much. He would go over and help her work in her garden, and he would take us with him. So many great memories of Grandma Lila's garden. As a brother, and I'm just realizing this as I'm talking to his brothers and sisters, Pat, who's not here with us today, she had surgery yesterday, so hi Aunt Pat, if she's watching this live stream. We love you, Aunt Pat. She is. Yay, hi Aunt Pat. She just shared with me yesterday that anytime she needed to fix anything or needed to know anything about anything, she'd call Grandpa Gary. She'd call her brother Gary. As a father, he was generous. There was one Christmas where my mother had said to me, now Jill, all of the girls want this doll called a Cabbage Patch doll. Do you want one? And I said, of course not, because I was getting a little older, right? I was in the stage where I needed to give up my Steve Austin doll too. Is it Steve Austin? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there you go. And I said, of course not, I do not want a doll. I am a little businesswoman, and I go to work with my dad. I do not need a doll. And here it comes, it's getting closer and closer. I still don't want this doll. Well, Christmas morning comes and all my friends got the doll. And I didn't, because Mom said, you said you didn't want it. Well, there were some tears. And Dad saw them. And a few days later, he was at the Grand Central equivalent, picking up some parts, right? Same story, different generation.
Yeah.
And he says, I was just picking up these parts. And out they wheel out this pallet of Cabbage Patch Kids. And he saw them, they were just right in front of him. And he saw them, And he looked around, and here came a swarm of ladies. And he said, I knew I had to get them really fast. So he grabbed two, and he said I was fighting for them, and they were trying to pull them out of my hand. Some of you in the crowd might know Zona Keys. He said they were all like Zona Keys coming at me, right? So fervent. Okay, yes, some of you know Zona. And he says I wouldn't let go of those dolls, and I had two of them in my mind. And you know how when you're a child, sometimes you make up pieces of the story. There's two versions of the story that I remember, and I'm just not sure which one is right, so I'll tell both of them, right? One version of the story is he grabbed two, but then got to the cash register, and there was a woman who didn't get one, and he gave one to her. That was one of I'll remember it. The other one is that he brought them both home for me and only gave me one at a time. So I don't know, Grandma, you might need to corroborate that story. He came home with two, I made the other one up. There you go. It's all right. It's something he would have done. It's something he would have done anyway. And, right? He would have done that anyway. And then the last words that I thought about Dad is just his love of land and nature. He loved the land, so much so that we named our property in Idaho The Land. And remember, he didn't have very creative names for things, right? So when we'll say we're going to the land, people are like, what? Yeah, that's the name of our property. You know, some people have fancy names. No, it was just the land, but he loved that. Did you guys know he wanted to be a forest ranger? That was his first, when he was growing up and even a young adult, that's what he wanted to be. See, he wanted to be a forest ranger. He didn't do that, and I asked him one time why, and he said, I just couldn't see myself raising a family in the middle of a forest. But he did. He did end up raising us in the middle of a forest at our land. One day I remembered Grandpa, he said, and Grandpa rarely got fervent or demanding about things. He just kind of went with the flow. It was, Darlene got fervent. She's like, we're going to do this. But he rarely got fervent and demanding. But this one was, we are all getting in this big white van, 15-passenger van. I have something to show you. I remember Tessa. This is actually the story where Moo Tao first came up. Moo Cow, Cameron, Moo Tao. So we got in this big 15-passenger van. He says, I've got something to show you. And we drive for 2 hours, and then these dusty roads, and everybody packed in this van. And he pulls us up to this land that's just like a dirt road and just weeds and trees and like nothing there. And he goes, ta-da! This is our land. We're going to build a cabin right here. And we were, Tessa trying to take charge. I remember she's like, okay, let's lay down a blanket. Let's have a picnic here. You guys eat this. You guys do that. And it was just so much fun to be a part of that beginning. But as we built the cabin and as we grew to love our cabin, one of my favorite stories of Grandpa, remember he rarely got fervent, but about 4 o'clock when we were there, almost every time we were there, he'd say, shh, listen. Here come the wind spirits. And he would make us all listen to the wind. And he'd say, that's where I'll be. That's where I'll be someday in the wind spirits. And on the night that he passed, I was as far away as I could be from Utah. I was in Cape Cod on the farthest little tip in this tiny little shack. And I went to bed, and here came the wind. And it was beautiful. And my dad is in the wind. He would be proud of his life. He checked off all of his boxes. The first person to give me a hug as I walked in on Friday sometime, was Jay. And Jay said, the reason we cry is for ourselves, because we'll miss him, but he lived a wonderfully full life. It's more than anyone could ever ask for. So my brothers and sisters and I, we debated how we wanted to do this. And we said, each one of us, we're just going to talk for 3 to 5 minutes. So apparently we're a little long-winded. I'm looking at the clock. We did really intend to save time for you. But just before this started, I get a little, on the program it says I am officiating, so I take my job serious here. Just before this started, Mom, you said, if it's just the 4 children sharing memories, then that's going to be enough for you. So I let everybody go along. I decided not to pull people off the stage. But we do have 5 or 10 minutes. If somebody feels, yes, Sue, please. If somebody feels like they really want to share a story of Grandpa, a short story, we do need to be out of the chapel by 1 o'clock. I'm sorry about that. But please come up here. Even as Aunt Sue is talking, if you want to come up and have a seat, that would be beautiful. Thank you.
I am one of 7 Evertsen children. The oldest is Lyle, his wife is Sandy. Lyle and Gary spent a great deal of their youth together and with Grandpa May, and have remained close to the very day of Gary's death. So there's Lyle, Gary, then there's me, then there's Maisie. She and her children and grandchildren are here today. And over the last many years, we have met as siblings as regularly as we could for birthdays or just to get together, often at Sandy and Lyle's, and regularly at Maisie and John's house. And laughter was the center of those visits and good food. Next comes Doug, our brother Doug, who passed away a year ago in January. All of his daughters are here today to honor him, and I'm grateful to them and want them to know how proud I am of them for coming and being here today. Then Pam is here with her husband, and yesterday she called in distress because of her sorrow losing her brother Gary, and she loved him very much. Then there's Pat. The story of Pat's relationship to Gary and Darlene is long. When Pat was born, Gary and Darlene were early married, and they used to take Pat home to their house for sleepovers. This is the beginning of the love affair of these two for children. And I must confess that Gary learned his love for children from one another. Lila Muriel May Evertsen was one of the grandest women, and I still want to be like her when I grow up. I've known your husband and dad for 78 years, and that's a long time, and I've loved you all of those years. When Maisie and I were young and on Jefferson, Gary would often go to mow Grandma Sue's lawn. The Evertsen name is Dutch. Grandma Sue was an immigrant from Holland. And Gary would mow her lawn, and Dad would say, don't accept any money from her. But Grandma would say, here, take a little money. You boys need money, but don't tell your dad. And that's one of his memories of her. Many of the grandchildren and children will remember Christmas Eve at Grandma's and Grandpa's house. The wonderful programs the grandchildren would perform here. And Tom Van Grimlin would often come to entertain the children dressed as Santa. And Tom Van Grimlin was my father Jack's mission companion. And that was a friendship that remained many, many years. I do want to also mention that Pat, when Asia was born, Gary and Darlene took Pat and Asia home from the hospital, and they stayed with her. As Pat has taken care of Asia's children, she would often take Asia's children, Raymond, Hayes, and Mason, to Gary and Darlene's to swim. They would go to the cabin together. If Pat were here, she would be the Evertsen to speak. Because that is she was the baby sister who was very well taken care of over the years. I do also want to mention, other than Grandpa May being an influence, our neighbor, Dick Ort, was the scoutmaster in the ward when we were growing up. And I think he taught a lot of what a good man is to the men he served. And today, Dick Ort's daughter, Annette, is taking care of Pat. You know, we were neighbors. My parents knew how to be neighbors and how to relate to people. And I hope I haven't left anything out, but we love each other. Pat used to tell people, they'd ask her, what are you doing today? Well, I'm going to go to a party with my brothers and sisters or to dinner. You like your family? But we love each one dearly, and we love being together. And the food's always wonderful and the company grand. And I just wanted to share from a sister's point of view what it was like to have areas of and he was lovely. Maisie and I, when we were young, used to look at Lyle and Garrett as our heroes. They could do no wrong. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I'll be brief, but as the favorite niece, I felt like it was obligated. and maybe Tiff, Kristen, Heather, Melinda, Allison, Jenny, who else is here? Asia. Maybe some of my other cousins would disagree that I was the favorite, but there are lots of us here, and even male cousins. I was the favorite girl cousin, but Todd, David, a couple of Jack is here, so lots of us cousins here who loved our Uncle Gary. But interestingly, and my sister, I want to mention my sister Kim, because the night that Uncle Gary died, she had a dream, and he was in it, and she said he was just so loving and happy and funny, and he'd made her a gift, and he said, Kim, I have a gift for you. And dreams don't ever make sense, because the gift was a homemade ravioli. but she woke up that morning and told her spouse, I think my Uncle Gary might have died last night. And later that day, Mom let us know that he had passed. So anyway, we love you, Uncle Gary. And he meant a lot to a lot of us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing in this wonderful celebration. I really do feel like we celebrated today, so thank you for that. Tears will flow, but they're happy tears for a man who lived really, really well. Darlene would like to thank everybody for their outpouring of love. I am not a scriptorian, but there is a beautiful scripture that just says, the love will pour out to you more than you could ever receive it. And I know that she's told me she is absolutely feeling that, so thank you so much. Many of us knew Gary in his early days and throughout his life, but there are some special friends that Gary entertained in the last 3 months. Annette and Bryn from hospice have just really made his transition so beautiful. So Mom also wanted to make sure that they were acknowledged as well as the friends and neighbors. Just as we end, there is a lunch for the family at Union Grill on 24th Street. So if you'd like to join us there, you are welcome. And then just in closing, we're going to do this with a smile on our face because Grandpa would love that. There was just one fun thing, well, there were many fun things, but one fun thing that Grandpa would do with his grandchildren. And he loved all the food that Grandma cooked for him. But when he was having a good meal, he would do this. He would go, that's good. You guys remember, right? That's good. So I just think it is very fitting for us to, maybe, we can call it a cheer if we'd like, to send Gary off in this celebration. We'll all do it together. You don't have a table in front of you. You can use rock, paper, scissors style, and everybody's got to do it. And I got my eyes on you, right? Everybody's got to get your hand out here. Get your fist ready. Yep, everybody ready? On the count of 3, this is how it's going to go. On the count of 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and we'll say, that's good. Are you ready? Let Ogden hear you. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's good. Thank you so much for coming. We are going to end with a closing prayer. Cameron, his grandson, is going to give us that, and then we will be done.
I don't know how you wore these things every day. They're very uncomfortable. Got his pants up, right?
I don't know who's going to buy anymore.
Actually, you went and got a couple. Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before Thee at this time with much gratitude in our hearts. Gratitude for being able to remember and celebrate the life that our grandpa lived and shared with us. We are so very grateful for the many wonderful experiences, the lessons, and the many wonderful memories that we have of our grandpa. We ask that we may remember those times, that they may strengthen us, that they may teach us, that we may continually remember all of the good that he did for each of us and for all of those around us. We are indeed grateful, Father, for the love that he shared with our grandma and for the great example that they are to us. We ask Thee at this time that we may each be comforted in knowing that Grandpa is in a happy place and that he is happy about the life that he lived and for the things that he was able to accomplish while here on earth. We ask that we may take these memories and never forget them and share them with those around us, that we may all be strengthened and uplifted. And we ask a special blessing to be with our grandma at this time, that she may be comforted, that she may know of the love that Grandpa has for her, and for the love that each of us has for her as well. And that we are here to help and to serve her with anything that she may need. Once again, Father, we are grateful for all of our many blessings. I'm so grateful for this time that we've had to share these wonderful memories and to be together. We love Thee and we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
One more minute.